Hello and welcome to Rallen's Rant. Today I'm joined by Ross Byrne. Ross is a professional rugby player for those of you who are not aware. He has amassed 15 caps for Ireland and 104. Is that incorrect?
That's incorrect.
How many? Come on.
13 caps for
13 caps, great start. And for Leinster, according to the Wikipedia, it's 104?
That's correct, I think.
Thank God. Right, well, Ross, that's
a good start.
It's, only uphill from here. But how are you keeping anyway?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm good. Well, I've started off pretty poorly, but we're actually...
As to be expected.
Yeah, precisely. But with regards to, I was thinking of opening questions. I had a lot in my brain, but one of them that I was actually thinking about nearly myself as I contemplated coming out of retirement to rugby was, what actually made you want to be an out half? When you were back, when you were 4, 5, whatever age it was, why did you pick the number 10? Or if so, did you choose another position and ended up being a 10?
Straight into it, I like it. Jesus, a bit of a deep start.
Yeah?
I don't really know, to be honest. I was kind of just sort of ended up always finding myself. Like, there wasn't even really positions kind of in the middle and trying to get the ball as much. And I was probably never very quick or bigger than anyone either. So I was probably always pretty good at passing the ball. That was probably my biggest strength. So that's probably how I ended up in that position. And then I suppose as I got older, I never really played another position. I just always knew I wanted to kind of be that position, I suppose, knowing that the 10 is kind of the one who's, well, has to control the game and is kind of a bit of the general to the team as well. That was always something that I suppose appealed to me, so I didn't really ever want to play another position.
You enjoyed the responsibility, because I was actually laughing about the time where John Keogh told me that I was moving to prop when I'd been obviously hooker for the first few years. And I came home and actually cried myself to sleep because I was like, hooker's the second worst position on the pitch, but then prop is the absolute worst. And I remember I came home and started crying, being like, oh, I'm one of the fat fucks, basically. And yeah, felt pretty miserable. And it's actually good that you touched on it there, that you actually enjoyed the responsibility of being the out half. And I think a lot of people who come out now, out of schools, the top schools, especially in Leinster's case, it's very systematic. But back maybe in our day, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, it was very much like retro type rugby. Everything, like I recall when I was playing in the same team as you, pretty much everything came through you on the pitch. Like we basically were 8 forwards being bossed around phase after phase by you. Do you think that kind of unstructured nature, or even the responsibility you had to actually undertake as the 10 for a team that maybe didn't have the structure that current teams do you think that kind of sped up your development and kind of gave you a great understanding of the game when you came out of school?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny, I actually had that conversation with Bomber with Brian O'Mara, and he always said that. He was saying it actually probably hindered me as well, which I never really thought of, but it definitely added to my probably understanding of the game and my game management. But I suppose the point that he was probably making was that it probably took away from my selfishness in the game in terms of like my own sort of like running game or trying to pull off something for myself as opposed to always trying to plot the team around the pitch, let's say, or put everyone in the best possible positions, which I suppose never really looked at it that way, which is probably why I've always been categorized as a game manager than a game breaker, let's say. But I wouldn't probably change it, to be honest, in terms of it's definitely got me to where I am today.
And even as you allude to there, that there are different types, and sure, I was even watching the NFL and they were talking about the exact same thing. There's running quarterbacks, there's passing, there's a mixture. Did you ever, especially when you say leave school, you go into a Leinster academy and you're obviously thinking, right, let's try and make a profession out of this, let's give it a whack. At any stage, especially in that early development stage, did you think, okay, I'm just going to back my game, I am good what I'm good at, maybe need to improve in certain elements? But as you said, you saw, well, at least you understood yourself as like a game manager type 10. Did you always think and predict that that's how you're going to model your game, or did you think watching maybe Quade Cooper back in the day when he was doing that?
No,
that I could be the fast, quick, up tempo 10.
Definitely not. I always knew what my strengths were and basically tried to just focus on them and obviously try to bring up the other areas. But even, I suppose even when I first went into, when I was in like Leinster school stuff, I was always told you're not quick or you're not fast enough and you're too weak when it comes to the weights. Not much has changed in that department, but finally they've kind of just accepted for who I am. So that was all. I always knew I wasn't going to be someone like a Quay Cooper or even Dan Carter, how he kind of would play the game. Sure, he'd play games where he'd be on the wing for half it, like, and he'd come up with ridiculous moments. But I always knew that there was probably very few players who could do what I could do. So I was just trying to make sure that I could do that better than anyone else could do it. I never tried to make myself say someone that everyone else was trying to do. If that, it was probably what I focused on. Yeah,
no, well said. And I'm just thinking there, trying to put myself in your shoes, albeit I am way too short and stocky and chubby and untalented to be in those shoes. But
you have the acceleration.
I do have the acceleration.
What I'd give.
Yeah, we can maybe trade. But I'm just thinking, even now, where it's amazing that we used to always consider ourselves, well, not ourselves, what the fuck am I talking about? But say the likes of you and everyone else in our year who went on to be pro, we used to always think, they're the up and comers. They, there could be the next big thing. They've such long careers ahead of us. And now you're like approaching, say, the prime or the apparent prime years of your career. But say when you even look back, or maybe even be a built-in trait, is there anything that, say, you learned through school about the game or even how you play that just stuck with you?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, probably a lot of stuff, and even like I think the cup competition probably prepares you better than anything else, because it is so ruthless in terms of like, if you lose, it's the worst thing of your life, but if you win, it's the best thing as well. Yeah. So I suppose that even the whole nature of that is something, but and the pressure that brings. So I suppose that definitely prepares you for the pressure of professional rugby. But I suppose, there's definitely traits of my game where we were even talking about a game we played in school, and I was actually watching some of it back a while ago during the lockdown, and I was kind of like, a lot of it hasn't really changed to what I do. But a lot of it is even from, I suppose, what we were coached as well. For me, it was always kind of, if you believe in the plan, just keep trusting the plan. That's something that I was probably stuck to now, probably as best I can. Now, that probably hasn't always happened, particularly for certain teams I play for. But that's probably one of the biggest things. And also a big thing which I always thought in school was play to your strengths, but try and get the best out of the other people in terms of, so what are their strengths? So obviously when we were in school, it was let you boys do all the kind of the hard yards, then I'd basically fire the ball out to Keane when we were in sixth year and let him do the running sort of thing. So that was, again, that's kind of something I probably have taken with me now. Yeah, and I've had this conversation with you and also other guys who are playing at a high level, and I suppose it relates to back in school, playing to your strengths, as you said, with coaches. And even now, more than ever, the game is overanalyzed in some cases. It's so detailed. But do you think, like, at what point do you think the players and coaches they both want the same thing? They both want to win. But say, for instance, when you've got a coach who comes in, say it's a brand new coach, or say it's an international or even club, and I see you smirking away there. I know where this is going. No. Hear me out. What is the ideal nearly philosophy of the way you want that person to play? Do you want them to say, listen, Ross, you're a game management type 10, we're going to suit that? Or is there a certain way you want basically the team to present it where you can go, okay, great, I can actually get behind this? So do you mean, what would be my ideal? What do you like to hear as a 10? Yeah, what do you like to hear? Yeah, well, obviously the coach is going to install their philosophy on the team and what they want. And obviously always a 10 is going to be a pretty big part in that. In most teams. Now, some teams they won't, in terms of the teams will be very sort of systematically structured. So I suppose in Leinster is a good example in terms of we wouldn't be very strict in our system. A lot of it would be left up to the actual decision makers on the pitch, which I think suits me quite well. Whereas if you're to look at, I'm trying to think, Bristol are probably a great example where they are so rigid in how they play. It's so structured that you kind of feel like you could probably drop a lot of players into a lot of different positions, and all you have to do is one or two jobs and the team would probably still function quite well.
So, for instance, say when you have a coach and you've had plenty of different coaches, and the nature of rugby is there's so many assistants, there's a head coach, in some cases director of rugby's. Like, what I'm always curious to find out, and I alluded to this when I had Alex Good on the podcast all those years ago, like, at what point does it, so every single coach, and you've coached before, I've coached before, and you know the game at this stage, certain coaches have a way they want to play. They have certain type of players, they have like certain cultures they want to create, and you've obviously had tremendous successes, you've had your good days, your bad days, but I'm just wondering when, say for instance, you don't, say, get selected, or you don't get picked for a squad, or whatever it may be, at what point can you just park that to one side and go, you know what, I'm still a good player? Or if it's, say for instance, not being selected for an Irish squad, an Irish team, does that really like make you question, just like a big defeat with a coach, does that make you question your ability to the point where you're like, am I good enough? Or is it a case where you kind of go, listen, it's this type of way that they're trying to play, doesn't necessarily suit me, I'm just going to have to focus on, say for instance, how I get on with my club?
It's probably a little bit different case to case. Obviously there's like, if different coaches have, say, slightly different philosophies, and if they want to go in a slightly different direction, you still, I suppose, you're not going to accept that, so you're obviously going to try and change their mind, so you have to do something different, or else whatever makes you good, make it so good that they can't not pick you, I suppose. And then I suppose, yeah, more on like a week-to-week basis, if you're not being picked, it's probably difficult. I've probably been fortunate enough in Leinster that really hasn't happened. I've missed out on big games, of course, but I probably haven't missed out too many games consecutively. And I'd imagine that definitely takes a big toll on a player's confidence. I suppose it's the same if you're left out from, say, international squads, because all you want to do is prove yourself, but you obviously don't have the opportunity to do it. So I suppose for me, it's probably just, you just want the next game to come around as quick as possible. The same as after a loss, really. So you can go and prove everyone wrong. And I suppose if you had a bad performance, you want to try and, I suppose, just put that right. And it's probably the same if you're not picked by a coach, you want to go and prove that the coach is wrong. That's probably what would be my biggest mindset.
Like that, along with, I'd say, injury and also the big semi-final losses, is that, say for instance, the not getting selected for a team or not getting selected to a start, is that the toughest part of being a rugby player?
Yeah, the losses are they probably, again, it probably depends on the situation, but yeah, it definitely is. I mean, it's obviously a great life, but there's obviously very tough parts of it as well, which probably a lot of people don't, or probably just doesn't really get it's not given any attention really, I suppose. It's probably like that in everything. I mean, everyone's job, there's good and there's bad, and the bad probably just isn't really highlighted. But yeah, it's definitely, losing for me is the worst part by far, particularly the big games that we have lost in recent years. Like it takes quite a while for them to go, and they probably don't ever go, really. Particularly games that you felt like you should have won. It's probably a different story if you're getting blown out of the water by 50 points. But when they're those tight games and you think it's one or two decisions that could have been different, and just little moments, they're probably the things that I would find the hardest, yeah. But that's part of sport and part of life, so you just have to get on with it and try and move on to the next one.
And like, have you developed or established some sort of like coping mechanism? Because I even remember back in school, and even from coaching your brother Harry as well, a loss is like, it's like fucking
the worst. Yeah, it's the worst. It's literally the worst thing on earth. Like, and the loss is way worse than the win is better, if that makes sense as well. Like, it is way worse, and you just have to
because like, to be honest, like, and let's be upfront about this. Like, you as a 10, like, you look, say, last week. I know you're not a huge NFL fan, but the MVP, Aaron Rodgers, lost a game. Every single person in America was saying he doesn't care. He's finished. He's the worst quarterback in the league. So he's gone from being the best player in the league to the worst. And you're in a similar position. So you come on, say, against Exeter after a couple of minutes. You put in a superb performance. You guide Leinster through a very tough fixture and on to the next round. Likewise, when you have your bad days, if you look, say, like the England game or whatever you want to pick up, I'll let you be the judge of that, not me. But like, as in, because when you have those bad days, 9 times out of 10, the 10 is simply going to be called out unless he has a absolute worldie of a game. But if a team doesn't function, apart from maybe set piece, the 10 is more often than not going to come under some criticism. So like, are you at a stage now where you can go, it's only the media, or it's only Richie Allen on fucking Twitter? But like, is there a certain point where you actually kind of think, shit, this is actually somewhat getting to me, it's eating into my game? Or are you able to just completely park it?
It's probably something I'm used to in terms of, obviously, like, whenever the team loses, the 10 is probably going to be a little bit scrutinized. So you kind of just have to accept it, really, and obviously trying to deal with it. In terms of the media, I just try and not look at it. I wouldn't be picking up a newspaper to look at it. Obviously, there'd be things on social media you would see, but like, you're just trying to have to avoid it. I mean, I think a lot of people's opinions are complete nonsense anyway, as you know. Sure, I said to you the whole time. So I'd probably, even when they're saying things, they could be saying something good about me, I'd probably be disagreeing with them as well. So you just have to, I mean, people have different ways of dealing with it. Some people kind of just laugh in the face of it. People will take it badly. It takes time to move on. But I suppose when you're younger, you probably read into it more, and you probably think kind of more of what outside noise or what they think. You probably care about that more, whereas now, to be honest, I don't really care as long as we win. There's even been games where we've probably won and people have probably been like, geez, he was shite. But it's kind of
off.
It's kind of a reaction. It's funny, like, even I'd be a big United fan and like watching them against young boys during the week and Jesse Lingard coming on and probably go mental at the TV, and like, it happens all the time, and then you're kind of like, Jesus, what are people shouting at the TV at me for? Exactly, so like, I can see probably how people react so quickly, because sport is like, it's so passionate, I suppose, and it's what makes it so good. But you just have to just get on with it, really. Like, there's not much else you can do. Like, I mean, just move on to the next game. I know that sounds so cliche and generic, but like, that is the cliche. The reality is, like, you can't. There's no magic potion. Like, you know what I mean? As in, you just have to accept it and try and, as I said, prove them wrong the next time. And the funny thing is, if you've man the match, the next thing, everyone forgets about the last thing. Like, people's memories are so short in sport.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is scary. Like, and people forget what people have achieved previously. So yeah, once you have a good game, it generally tends to go away. So probably just trying to do that as best as possible.
Yeah, because and we do talk about, like, I've spoken about it with you and even with some of our other friends. Like, when I've a shit day in work, I find out about it, and so does my team, and so does my boss. When you've a shit day in work, you potentially have 55,000 people in a stadium, keyboard warriors all over Twitter, podcasts, everything. So it's just amplified to the point of just madness in some cases. And then, as you said, like, if you have a great game, people will be like, oh, absolutely phenomenal. But as you somewhat alluded to earlier in the pod, is like, nearly when you win and when you perform well, especially with a club like Leinster, that's like to be expected. So like, they're nearly like, oh yeah, they won away in Exeter, but you know, they're Leinster, they should be able to do that. Oh, Ross Byrne was great. Yeah, well, he should be able to do that. And do you think that's something that now is the case with Leinster, where you've had such great success? Like, you think about maybe when you came into Leinster, losing Pro 14 finals to Connacht, to now every single time Leinster go on the pitch, no matter who they're up against, no matter what venue they're playing in, the expectation is, even from a neutral, is that they should or at least could win this game, even if it's away in France or away to a top English team. Do you think that's something that now, it's obviously not a curse because it means you're actually doing something fucking right, but is it something you're aware of as a player and then also as a squad, that there is that target on your back, that you are now a big club and a lot of teams will see you as a good scalp if they get the W?
Yeah, it's something we're very wary of, but I think it's an advantage because, as you said, everyone wants to beat us and we play a lot of teams, and for them it's probably their final. But I suppose that shows how well we've probably done. And it also means, I suppose, if we start the game well and we get on top, that little bit of doubt's going to creep into them pretty quickly. Yeah, I think it's probably an advantage more than anything else. It's just trying to, I suppose, use it to our advantage and not really get worked up by the expectation. And also it's probably where if you want to be at the top in your sport, then that's the team you want to be playing for. Really, you want to be playing for the team that is expected to win every game, as opposed to they win a game and everyone's going bananas and it's just a regular league game sort of thing, and then they lose the next 3 in a row. So that is where you want to be. So and I'd imagine the vast majority, if not all, of the players in Leinster have that mindset.
You don't want to be like a Burnley type football team where you celebrate the 3.1-0 win against Newcastle on a Monday night. But to go back nearly from an individual standpoint here, it was only when I was really thinking about this whole podcast, and nearly, like, I've obviously known you for quite a long time, and I think back to all these little moments throughout school, after school. I think about all the battles you used to have within school with other 10s, competition. Even out of school, I remember you and Conor McKeown was the big rivalry out of school. And there was a few other rivalries as well that have come and gone. Now it's obviously you and Johnny, and obviously Harry as well is in the mix, and there's 1 or 2 other guys as well. But a big point of your career, I suppose, was when it got to that stage where there was yourself, there was Johnny, and there was also Joey in at Leinster, and there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of people saying this guy should do that, he should do this coach should do that, blah blah blah. Like, was there ever a time in that period, and feel free to tell me to fuck off, but
are we getting to deadline day here?
Harry Redknapp outside his car, yeah, we might sign him. But
the yellow ties on now.
Yeah, exactly. Jim White. But that was a bit Arnold Schwarzenegger. And my question is, was there ever a point in that kind of transfer fiasco where you were close to saying, okay, say goodbye for a few years and go elsewhere? Or was it very much, listen, I'm playing here at Leinster, I don't care about the outside noise.
Honestly, no, not for the slightest, like, not even half a second.
Not even half a second?
Honestly, no.
There wasn't even a point where you were like...
I promise, no. The funny thing is, I actually played more minutes than anyone in Leinster that season. Not just 10, any player. So for me, it didn't make a single bit of, it didn't make sense at all.
So you just view that as complete irrelevant outside noise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, yeah, there was obviously, not inside noise, but there was a conversation and stuff, but it didn't affect me at all. In terms of it didn't change my mind at all. I was pretty happy where I was or where I am, and it was a pretty instant no.
Okay.
So.
No, that's interesting, because I've never even got a firm answer off you for that question. So
we'll save the details for the book, will we?
We'll save the juicy details for Ross Byrne's biography in about 10, 15 years. But yeah, that'll be a good chapter. Moving on.
What would we call it?
I'm trying to think what would be... I just keep thinking of Birch's one. What was it? Blue Blood? And a picture of him just charging at someone. Some of them are the cheesiest ever. Oh, I could think of too many. Moving on, also with that, so there's obviously huge elements of a pro rugby player's career where you've got your club, you've got international, you've got lines, you've got the barbaric piss up of the barbarians, you have even Leinster A, you even have AIL in some cases. But is there a case where, and as I said, you don't have to go into huge detail here, but you obviously have played for Leinster, you've played for Ireland. do you like look at certain things with Ireland now? Because I know every single week, as you said, apart from say the odd couple of weeks off in post-season, and when you've time to yourself to recover and do whatever you please. But say with Ireland, for instance, if you're focusing in on that, that's obviously part of the lines, the pinnacle of someone's career, and it's what everyone in the halls of the D4 school of St. Michael's dreams of. I include myself till they're smashed, but...
It's not too late.
Well, I think a few would object to that. But do you think that, like, when you look at, say, the Irish appearances to date, or even your career to date, especially focusing in on Ireland, is there any, like, regret in that? Or is it more frustration? Or is it a case of just, listen, I did my best when, I got the opportunities, and if I get another one again, I'll just take it?
I don't know if there's much regret, to be honest. Like, obviously, when I started off for Ireland, I actually went on a tour to Australia and didn't get capped. It was obviously great.
The famous tour of Australia.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah,
Save that for the book. Save that.
And then first cap was November, the following November, in Chicago, actually, bizarrely enough, against Italy. And then so I got 2 caps, and then for the Six Nations, I think I was actually dropped from the squad. And I was kind of a bit like, I suppose, it's more just frustrating. I suppose I couldn't really understand. Well, I didn't agree with it, obviously. Not biased. But like, it didn't really make much sense to me, I suppose. And then that was the World Cup pre-season that summer, which was just a bit of a disaster all around well, like, the World Cup obviously wasn't successful, and it was probably seen. And then obviously I was in the pre-season, or I was played against England, which was
taken to the cleanest.
The funny thing is, first 15 minutes I actually thought I played great. Slotted a couple of nice kicks, and then obviously the floodgates open and we concede 50 points. So after that, and then the following game, I actually got injured in that game, so I couldn't play the following game. Not that I don't think I would have. I think that pretty much was the nail in the coffin anyway. But so I obviously didn't go to the World Cup. But
much to Paul from St. Margaret's disapproval.
And then obviously Joe Schmidt left, and then Andy Farrell came in, and then obviously I got a bit more of a chance there, and then I was picked, and then I didn't really haven't got any starts, but a couple of games off the bench. I did have a start against England, which again
naturally just seems to come around every year.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I don't know what people said on the outside, but I thought the plan was implemented relatively well. We just couldn't really score, which obviously doesn't help.
Yeah.
But, then, I suppose I had a couple of games off the bench and then just went in different directions. So I suppose it's more frustration than anything. But there's loads of players who are frustrated and feel like they should be in, but unfortunately it's only the head coach's opinion that matters. So you just have to put yourself, I suppose, in the best position to get yourself back in the team. So that's probably just have to start with Leinster, really play as best you can there. And if Leinster are successful, then you're going to give yourself a better chance.
Yeah, no, well said. And just to briefly ask, because I alluded to you there just after the World Cup camp before it was obviously announced, and we were playing in St. Margaret's with a huge Irish fan who shook your hand for about 48 seconds wishing you all the best with the squad selection. But I don't know, like, you've covered most of, like, as you said, how you thought you performed. But like, when you think of Ireland, there is a hoodoo, and it's like, I don't know, is it Mayo or someone? There's a curse on Mayo or someone, is it?
Good GA knowledge there.
Yeah, my limited, even though Joyce would be like, you theory's gone on Mayo. But with regards to like Ireland, there seems to be some sort of like hoodoo over them when it comes to the World Cups.
I think that's ridiculous, personally.
But like, that's the media narrative. I'm not necessarily agreeing with,
because
there's so many moving
but like,
parts.
if they probably looked at all the games, like, if you look at the last World Cup, like, they played against New Zealand. New Zealand were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ireland weren't. Ireland also lost to Japan in the group stages. Like I know there was players playing that maybe would like they would have had starters that played against New Zealand, didn't play against Japan, but like they still lost against Japan in terms of, so they probably weren't performing to the level that they beat New Zealand the previous November. Whereas if they were, maybe they would have beaten them. And even the Six Nations before that was pretty poor by that team standards, because that team obviously had won the Grand Slam. And then I suppose if you look at the 2015 World Cup, rugby probably evolved in terms of Argentina ripped Ireland apart. Defensive systems changed after that World Cup because of how the attack was gone. 2011, it was the new thing of Wales are now enormous backline. Yeah. So like they were shoving back rows in the centre back here because of it. So they probably got caught out a little bit again by probably an evolving team, and maybe were kind of shocked by it. So, and further back than that, I don't really remember it than the Eddie O'Sullivan fiasco. So
that's for boxing during training sessions.
I don't know. Like, I think if they just look at it, if people look at it a case, like they just haven't. They've just been caught out, really. I think more than anything. I don't think it's a hoodoo. And also, you probably need a bit of a luck up the draw. Obviously, because in last World Cup they lost Japan and they play against New Zealand, whereas if they'd end up playing against South Africa, the way South Africa play, you probably have a pretty good chance, like if you kind of hang on in there as long as possible. So
easier said than done.
So like I suppose that the look at the draw as well is obviously a big thing.
Fair. And one of the things I personally wanted to chat about was just as in, if you look now at the landscape of rugby, and I'm not going to give you the general, like, what you see in rugby at the moment, like, where do you think the game's at? Because there's enough people writing shit about that.
You tell me, you watch more of it than me.
No, but it's every week there's someone being like, I think rugby's deep trouble. And it's like, well, then why are you analysing it every day?
What does that mean?
Yeah. What does that actually mean?
We need a breakaway Super League, do we?
Yeah, potentially. But what I was meaning to ask was, like, back to yourself here, do you, and like, it's not even so like myself, I think of myself when I'm, say, looking at my work, I think maybe a year or two ahead. Do you ever, because as you said, like, the best way for you to actually treat your even mental health during a like season is to go, right, next game. If I'm subbing, be good off the bench. If I'm starting, make sure I get my detail, play well, blah, blah, blah. Do you ever like look beyond that and go, okay, well, listen, by the time I'm 30, by the time I retire, I want to do this, I want to do that. Is there anything in the Ross Byrne to-do list that you like feel like you need to achieve for you to look back in your career and go, yeah, no, that's exactly what I signed up for?
Yeah, there'll definitely be things like when you're younger, I think it's just like just take each day as it comes, and all of a sudden 5 years go by and
you're like, where's my childhood?
So I think you probably do, like, you're probably going, oh geez, by the time I'm this age I hope I've achieved this. I think definitely there's definitely certain goals or I don't know what anyone else does, but that's what I would, I suppose, hold myself a little bit to. I suppose it's just trying to put, but you're like, it's like anything in terms of setting up a bloody pension, like, you know what I mean? People want to know that they've achieved certain things and they're on target for certain goals as well. So I suppose all you can do is put yourself in the best position to achieve what you want to achieve, and then at least if you've done that by the end of it and it doesn't go well, you've given yourself the best chance. So I suppose once I do that, I think I'll be happy enough. Okay,
and save the actual answers for that for the book?
Well, you're not paying me, so if you want to set up a premium,
a Revolut account, or actually get the GoFundMe back, for the exclusive Patreon answers.
Do you want the details?
No. What I actually do want to know is just one detail, as in, like, what is the most immediate goal of yours right now, where you're kind of like, I want to get this done, I want to achieve
for me,
that.
It'd be like, it's always silverware for me. That's how I would always probably judge my career when I finish. So like, obviously we've been lucky, well, not lucky, I suppose. In Leinster we've won obviously the last 4 leagues, won 1 European Cup since I've been there. So obviously Europe is a pretty obvious target. Like,
Yeah.
So that would be huge, really. But yeah, for me, it would always be trophies, and obviously internationally as well is always. Well, you have to get back in the team, I suppose, before you start winning stuff. But even internationally, I'd always be geared towards winning in terms of 50 caps, let's say, is great, or 100 caps is phenomenal. But I'd rather have 20 caps and win something than win nothing. That's how I would always judge. It would be by winning stuff.
You sound like a bit of a mini Roy Keane there, being like, but you never won anything, Jamie. You never won the title. Just judging everything.
Slating Villa for
celebrating relegation.
Saving it out. No, I don't. Yeah, well, that's just beef. It's also because when you win trophies, they're the best days.
Yeah.
And obviously the losses are so bad, so they often lead to the best 2 or 3 days of the year, if not your life. So.
Getting on planes after Australia tours, and next minute you wake up God knows where. And that's something I remember Ronan O'Gara talked about. I think it could have been in that fucking Johnny Sexton documentary he did. It was Rod's documentary, and he talked about, and I'm always very interested to get the take on it from all rugby players, all rugby coaches as well. And I chatted to Paul Gustard on the podcast about it as well. Like, what actually is, if you could compare the two, you winning a Champions Cup or a Pro 14, does that, as you said, it's 2, 3, often 1 week, 2 week, just absolute bender where you go absolutely bananas, celebrate with all your close friends.
I wish it was 2 weeks, jeez.
Yeah, well, sorry, it's a couple of days. But does that actually withstand the test of time over, say, a devastating defeat? So, like, an example would nearly be like, even on a low key scale, would be your senior cup win in 5th year to your senior cup loss in 6th year, and obviously you can relate that to whatever pro event or tournament you've won and lost as well.
Yeah, sorry, I know what you mean. Yeah, like obviously the losses are like properly like gut wrenching, like, so it is like devastating, and but the wins, like, yeah, those couple of days you have are like, yeah, they're class.
Yeah,
like,
they're good.
Yeah, like they are. That's proper jock chat, like.
Yeah, they're absolutely deadly.
Kylie's like
open up Kylie's.
No, they are like it is. Yeah, they probably do match the. I suppose it's just that's what your year is. It's what you've been trying to achieve. So I suppose the satisfaction is achieved. Let's say.
Yeah, and you enjoy yourself. And yeah, I suppose lastly, before we venture into some sort of quick fire that a lot of people have been kind enough to ask some ridiculous things on.
Can there be names attached to this?
If you want. Well, you actually won't even have to guess half of them. They'll be known before I even finish the question. But I suppose it'd be naive of me to not ask it, as it is somewhat an elephant in the room. And obviously, you're in the unique situation where you've got a brother who is also quite talented at rugby and plays the same position as you, which is absolutely insane. I can't think of many Irish people, let alone rugby players. Obviously, we've got the New Zealanders, but you obviously now are in a position where I could only imagine me working with my brother in a 9-to-5 situation where I'd be fucking going bananas at him. He'd be like, you didn't get your shit in on time. And I'd be like, piss off, stuff like that. And I know I'm not trying to get an agenda going here because I know both yous.
Just stir a little bit more.
Yeah, stir a little stuff in the pot. But I know both of yous have played with you, have coached Harry. And it's obviously at a stage now where he's grown up. He's getting more confident. He's got a few more caps under his belt, exposure to international teams. Is there a point where you start thinking, okay, well, obviously me and him love to chat, we love to moan, we love to celebrate, etc., etc. But is there going to be a time where you're going to have to go, right, well, it's not personal because it will never, like, your job should never be more than your family, put it that way. And I sound like Vin Diesel saying that.
Oh my God.
But
ride or die.
Yeah, exactly. But is there ever a point where you're just like, this is a bit of a fucking nuisance? Like, of all circumstances to find myself in, I've got my brother, and we're both gunning for that number 10 jersey.
And see what she said.
No, I don't want to get. She's on holidays. That'd be another podcast
Yeah, like
in
people
itself.
always ask, but not really, to be honest. Kind of it is what it is. Like,
Do you ever talk about it?
yeah, bits and bit. I suppose we would a bit. I suppose, funny enough, we've actually played together twice.
Yeah, 12.
Which no one
Or
talks
13.
about.
You were 13.
I was 12. I was 12 twice, which is...
Were you not 13? Yeah,
I
wore the
wore-
number 13.
The 12 didn't fit me. I need a bit more extra beef. Although maybe he could probably fit into it at the moment.
Yeah.
He's a bit larger.
Hmm.
But yeah, I suppose even being in like a club like Leinster, I suppose, is like you're always going to need 2, if not 3 players in a position.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's obviously going to be times where one of us is picked and the other one isn't picked and the other person's disappointed, but there's always a good chance that person's going to have to come on. So there's obviously initial disappointment with selection, but like you just have to get on with it. And like it would never be a case of like if the other person was picked, we wouldn't be talking to each other.
Yeah, the
or
dinner
like,
table just be
yeah,
like...
be trying to melt each other in training. Well, that would happen anyway, so that's normal. Like, and that was like brothers argue and fight all the time. So
Yeah, I know that.
It's just normal. Like it hasn't really changed anything. Next will be a big punch up in training or something.
Yeah.
Scandal.
42.ie,
yeah, so
burn
like,
punch up.
I suppose I'm not giving people the answer they want. But
we
it honestly
wanna-
hasn't really changed that much. Like I don't know. Maybe the lads will be able to tell you. Maybe it is different. I don't know. But to me, it doesn't really seem that different now. Yeah, like obviously if you're... Maybe there'll be a selection down the line and I'll be going mad.
Yeah,
but
what
like,
that?
I'll be going mad anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So
no matter who's there.
That's the thing, yeah.
But it must be also pretty cool as well. Like,
Yeah, no,
getting to
that's-
actually play.
That's also the thing, like we're in and out training every day together. And we've been lucky enough to play. Unfortunately, Harry was injured, I suppose, towards the end of last season for a lot of it, so he would have missed out on some of the bigger games. But yeah, like how many brothers, I suppose, get to play in a top professional team together, and also the team that you've grown up supporting where you're from. So it is pretty unique. So it's I wouldn't be changing it.
Yeah, no, well said. And I suppose last thing I want to ask before... that was quick.
How many goals did Ronaldo score against Liverpool in a few weeks?
No, because that's
2.
going to be a 0.
2.
Is this in the League Cup or FA Cup?
Doesn't matter
Premier
what game
League.
it is. Premier
I'm
League.
not getting into a dispute. All I know is Liverpool won and United didn't. But last point I wanted to make was I always am intrigued to... Because it's nearly like you live, and I remember Brian O'Mara, shout out to my first ever guest, he was even saying, like, you're in this bubble. You're in this nearly, like, Truman Show fictional life where you are...
Truman Show?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Every single professional rugby player is going to be like, what the fuck? I'm not Truman. But my point is, you're in such a bubble, such a regimented lifestyle where every day, every week, it's put out to you by phone or whatever it may be. You know exactly what you'll be doing every week, most of the time, who you're playing, getting fed, blah, blah, blah. Do you ever think beyond that? Do you ever think about the day where you have that dreaded moment where you go, the legs are gone, head's gone, and you go, I'm going to retire? Do you ever think about that? Even at such, I know it's a ridiculous question in many people's eyes to ask, but do you ever think about what Ross Byrne will be doing, what he'll look like when your time as a rugby player's up? Do you think, I want to coach? Do I want to be a 9-to-5 merchant? Do I want to get on off the ball as soon as possible? Or what do you envision?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's probably changed a bit even when I was first kind of in the academy or a bit younger. Like we didn't really think about, or I suppose if you're in college as well, you're not really, when people are in college, they're not thinking about what they're going to be doing in 15 years time, really. I'm sure some very switched on people are, mind you. Doesn't say a lot for us, does it?
No.
But it's definitely changed. And I suppose even Leinster are pretty good at pushing lads to start preparing a little bit for life after rugby, because obviously we're all very wary that we're all going to have some sort of job once we do finish.
Yeah.
I don't know what that will be, but yeah, like we'd be try to do a good bit on the side and trying to put bits and pieces in place, so that it isn't just a complete shock. I'm sure it's going to be a complete shock, but
I'm sitting at the end of my bed.
Exactly.
I was like, what are you going to do?
As long as we don't have that situation, I think we're in a good place. But yeah, Maybe ask me in 4 years' time. It could be
I'll
terrifying.
I'll come back and you'll be like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do.
But yeah, no, I think a lot of the lads, I think also if other lads are doing stuff, then you're probably going to start feeling, which a lot of lads do, you're kind of going to go, shit, I definitely need to be doing something here. So it's probably it's becoming more normal, I would say.
Yeah. Planning and all that.
If planning's becoming more normal.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's more or less what I needed to ask, what I wanted to ask. There are obviously a few things that need to be addressed in the shape of a quickfire. Some of them won't be quickfires. I'd say you're going to have to actually have
we're
a
just
think.
continuing.
We're more or less continuing on with just maybe slightly more ridiculous.
When's the actual rant coming, considering it's called Rallen's rant?
That I probably would just leave an X-rated version of my actual thoughts on your career and coaches and all that. I'll leave that for a separate episode. But this one, like, you definitely should know who this question is from, and it's very specific as well. So the best JCT number 8 you've ever seen.
I know who this is from. Oh, jeez.
Don't pick him. He's not going to be happy.
Oh, God. Do you play for Terran Europe by any chance?
No. I know that's actually an obvious one.
No, I actually know who said it, but that's why I'm saying it wasn't Conor Duffy.
Yeah, it was. Parise.
No, I'm saying the answer wasn't Conor
Duffy. Oh, was it Conor Duffy? He did ask. I think if you're talking about showmanship...
I'll tell you what. He had the best 3 performances, but when he tried to nut someone in the final, it just... It went downhill from there.
Yeah,
0 to 0.
Fair. Best coffee in Dublin.
3 FE.
Even though it's €4 for a coffee now.
Yeah,
€4
should be 5.
Plus tip. Who is a better golfer, you or Richie?
Me.
Okay, no comments.
More consistent.
Okay, yeah. I'm not going to say anything, which is quite tough in my profession.
Well, what do you think?
I think if who's
won the last 2 times we've played?
If we're basing it on...
Who's won the last 2 times we've played?
If you're going by...
Well, what do you mean? Who's won the last 2 times we've played?
If you're going by the implication... Are you going to
come up with some ridiculous
No.
fabrication?
A lot of people say you're only as good as your last game or your last performance, and in that case, you're better. But if you're going for the quotation of form is temporary, class is permanent, I think I'd be more the latter as opposed to the former.
Well, I disagree because your form is only good recently since you've got rid of your 400-yard slice.
Yeah.
So you're wrong
again. That's your answer. I'll respectfully agree with it for the sake of the continuation of this podcast. But this was another one. What did you learn? Well, I suppose, what did you learn from coaching in the school?
Well, that's not quick fire.
No, it's not. But like, if I don't ask it, these people get very upset.
What did I learn from coaching in the school?
I've only a few episodes left, so fuck it.
Planning was a big one. Starting out, the old plan going into 5 minutes before training, Tyrone and Joyce probably wasn't the best. Making
Byrne, do you know handling dribbling?
Yeah, trying to make stuff up. Planning was probably a big one. Learning. I suppose it probably gave it a bit of a perspective in terms of how hard it actually is to coach. So if you're a player trying to take on board as best as possible or actually understand from where the coaches come from, I suppose that's probably they're probably the 2 biggest things. Yeah.
Fair. The best comedy film you've ever seen?
Wedding Crashers, because I could watch it over and over again.
Yeah. Kindly leave. So this is, I asked the same one to Alex Good, and it's not a trick question. It's your favourite coach ever. So it doesn't have to be the best, but just the coach you're like, geez, he was my favourite. Was he ever your coach?
Lockdown coach. My favourite coach. God, I'll tell you, Matt O'Connor was the funniest coach by a mile.
Why?
His one-liners were just incredible. Like, he was a stand-up comedian. I'm trying to think I don't know, had some, probably in school, maybe someone like Skinner was probably up there, yeah. Although we definitely had our ups and our downs. So maybe not him, actually.
What about Bomber?
Yeah, Bomber would be up there as well, yeah.
There's so many. I even keep laughing at Chuckles Comiskey as well. or even go back
Keevo, Michael Keevan, actually, yeah. What an energizer.
Oh, huge energy. So, what else is there? The toughest player you've ever played against?
What do you mean by toughest? Like, as in, like...
Tough, as in, like, who would Sean Dyche look at and go, I want him in my team?
Manu
Tuolangi. You're in for a tough day when he's...
I'm trying to think who would do well for Burnley up front. Like.
Yeah, he would.
I don't know.
He would just start throwing his weight around when Sean Dyche would just be like, get in there.
Yeah, maybe him just throw him in the midfield, barrel through people.
Yeah.
For Burnley, that is. Yes,
for Burnley, not for a Man City technical team. What else is there? Oh, this is quite actually relevant considering I killed one today and it's not human related. If there's a spider in the house, do you let it live or are you the type of person that will kill it?
Oh, I just let it be, yeah.
Let it be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the song.
Is Harry the same?
He wouldn't get off the couch. So
he just
honestly, if it crawled across his face, as long as it got off him, he'd be fine. As long as it doesn't upset him.
The weirdest thing you've ever seen on a rugby pitch?
Oh, the weird.
Or even funniest, weirdest, funniest.
Jesus, that's. I don't know what the weirdest. I don't know how this came to mind, but this is bizarre from school. We were in, I think it was in sec. We were playing junior game and we were playing against Methody.
I know this game.
Dan Levy was playing anyway. We were getting smoked. Like, we were losing like 21-0 or something. Like, they were so much better than us. And it was like just after the second half. And a big fight broke out. And one of their parents came on and started like hitting one of our players with an umbrella.
Good weapon.
And the ref basically just had enough. Because a few kind of little scuffles had broken out, a few fights. Yeah. And the ref basically had enough and just walked off the pitch and was like, no, game's done, abandoned, gone. And we were like, Jesus, not great there, losing 21, whatever. So we come back, like, to whatever, kind of shake hands, whatever, go back into the thing, and like the coaches are kind of, Levy just walks in and goes, yes, lads, well done, that's a draw. That's a draw. Well done, great result. And like, I don't think he played again till Christmas. Like, the game was in like October. I don't think he played again. They were just like, is this guy for real?
Yeah.
Like, that performance was nothing short of a disgrace.
I actually took part in that game. I'll never forget that. And Skinner went bananas.
Yeah.
He said, we didn't actually draw the game. If you're going to go on that technicality bullshit, get out of here.
Yeah, I don't know how that came to my mind, but that's pretty...
Yeah, the ref just had absolute... Like, he just was like, I'm out of here. He obviously had... afternoon pints to get to.
I don't know what like the RDS, the lights going out was pretty funny as well. And Jack McGrath actually tried to kick the ball out touch and miss touch for the end of the game. Tried to run after it as well. I don't know if they're...
Yeah, no fair shouts. Is there anything? Okay, ideal scenario, and you can't do a Tom Brady on it, but what age would you like to be when you retire?
How old is Tom Brady?
He's like 45, 44. But he's like low to mid 40s.
That's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
What age would I like to retire?
Yeah, and don't say like tomorrow.
I actually don't know because...
You don't know?
I mean, I would definitely like to go for another... I wouldn't like to retire, I don't think, in the next 5 to 6 years. So I definitely would like to go into my 30s. That's for sure. But I don't know. I couldn't put a number on it.
Fair.
I don't think I'd like to go to 45.
Yeah, Jesus,
don't think
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think I'd probably end up in a wheelchair if that was the case.
That'd be bleak. And last one is describe yourself in 3 words.
Describe myself?
Yeah, well, not me. Like, obviously you.
I don't know. Well, like, I'll describe you in 3 words.
Yeah. That's too easy.
Oh, describe myself in 3 words. Jesus.
Make sure the mic picks this one up now.
I'm trying to think till I go. I don't know. Cynical.
Cynical? I'm taking that as one.
I'm a simple man.
A simple man. Yeah. Okay, fair. Well, listen, Ross, that was nearly 5 years in the making, so I want to thank you for coming on, talking all things related to the game of Union, Dan Levy versus Methody and everything in between. But thanks, obviously, for coming on. Hope everyone enjoys this. I know there's only a few left, but listen, hopefully this goes a long way and easing the pain. But Byrne, Ross, whatever I will phrase you as, thank you very much for coming on. Enjoy chatting.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem.